99.
And then Pierre Michaud, and I got to be honest, Pierre, I don't know where you graduated.
You gotta do that homework, Thomas. 1993.
1993. Okay,
so because it's the Madawaska edition.
Yeah.
I tried my best, but so we got a good spread here. We got a good little spread in terms of when these guys went to high school, so different eras. But tonight's draft is open to it's going to be all of Madtown. It's going to be picks from back in the day, current, you name it. We're going to go there. And then tonight's draft expert, we got a very special expert on board here who has, a lot of experience with I'm guessing these guys that are on that are team captains and just been around and seen a lot of the guys that will be named tonight. So we got Matt Rossignol joining us tonight, and Doc rocked in the Madawaska gear. We were talking about it before we came on the air tonight.
Yeah, I coached two of the players and coached against Pierre. When I coached at Holton, Pierre was playing for Madawaska. I coached at Holton from 89 to 93, so had the misfortune of having to coach against Pierre. He was a great player back then, of course. Had a great career at Umpy as well. And Alan and Andrew are two of my favorite players that I had the opportunity to coach too. So this is going to be fun.
So I want to just get your expertise right off the bat here. So if you could give us the scouting report on each of these team captains here in their heyday, what was the scouting report on each of these guys?
Well, Pierre, of course, got a little stronger after high school. I remember him being pretty slender, but he was tall, nice touch around the basket, what I would consider quick twitch. He was a quick jumper, so he hurt us on the glass. Those last 2 years I coached at at Holton, I didn't really have any size. In fact, I didn't have a starter that was 6 feet tall, so he presented a lot of problems for us that way. Of course, Alan could shoot the three. I bugged him to get better off the bounce a little bit, but of course, being 6'5", he was able to shoot over people quite a bit. So deadly foul shooter as well, and a great rebounder. He had the fortune of playing on a team that had a lot of height. With the Sirwa boys and Josh Pelletier, you're looking at 4 players that are 6'5" and taller, so probably explains why we had success. And then, of course, Andrew, unfortunately was able to coach him his senior year, but I've always said Andrew is probably the best player I ever coached for males in my coaching career, and that includes at Holton, at Van Buren for 5 years, and Madawaska for 9 years. Of course, I came back this past season. So he could just do it all, defensively, offensively, worked hard in practice, great shooter, and believe it or not, he even got better after high school. So pleasure to coach both of these guys, and not a pleasure to coach against Pierre.
So obviously you were just talking about your experience as a head coach going back to the early 90s. So you've coached against a lot. You've seen a lot of great players, and you've also coached a lot of great teams. Just curious, if you were one of the team captains tonight, what would be your approach? What's your thought process on building a good team? Do you try to build around a big man? You look for great guard play? What would be your approach to building a good team here?
Well, it's funny you should talk about that, because the NFL draft is going on last night and tonight, and I don't like to admit this in New England Patriots country, but Andrew knows, and I think Alan probably knows, I'm a Dolphins fan, long-suffering, and that's a big debate in football. Do you go best player available, or do you try to fit a need? If I was drafting, I would kind of go positionless, to be honest with you. I would go best player available, but I could understand the other approach too.
All right. And then I just want to bring the guys in here, too. I'm going to go around the horn. So just curious. I mean, we're picking from a very big pool of players spanning the entire history of Madawaska basketball. So, Alan, I want to ask you what your earliest memories of Madawaska high school basketball are. Do you remember, going to games as a kid? Remember some of the guys you saw as a kid? Just want to kind of get an insight as to what you remember in terms of your first experience of Madawaska basketball.
Well, my first experience started when I was in 6th grade, because I lived in Grand Isle, so I didn't get to travel much. So I went to Grand Isle Elementary School, so we didn't know that many people in Madawaska once we moved from Caribou. So when my brother joined freshman year, we started going. That was Keith Sears' year, and I don't remember. I just remember Keith Sears hitting a scoop buzzer beater one year, and the crowd was going crazy. I think it was a road game. I don't remember which team, but my brother came back talking about it. And so I remember from there. But growing up, so varsity as a sophomore year, got to play with a bunch of good players, learned a lot from them, and coach taught me a lot. So that's my
That's it. That's the rundown right there.
I don't have much to go with. So.
Drew, how about you? Obviously, you had some older brothers, so you probably were around those teams growing up, and obviously your dad too, just coming from that community. So just curious what your earliest recollections of Madawaska basketball were for you.
Was the old men's pickup at the Madawaska High School. It was always a treat to go down. That's when you had a lot of older guys going there. That's when Madawaska was in full bloom. The mill was running and operating at full capacity, all that stuff. You'd go to the court, to the gym, and they'd have both courts running side by side with, two teams on each court waiting to get on. So it was always fun kind of watching that, and then getting to see my dad play and my two older brothers play. Got to see a lot of Pierre play and Joey Canan and some of those guys. So, I grew up watching basketball. I loved it. And then, of course, you have the legend of Matt Rossignol, who's, the greatest basketball player to come out of the state of Maine, in my opinion. And so just right there, right? And so there's a lot of good things come out of the valley and come out of our area. And I think it might not be looked on as high upon as maybe some downstate teams, but I think we've held our own and we've kind of shown it through the years. So,
all right. How about you, Pierre?
I can really vividly remember this, Tom. When I fell in love with the game, really, my dad, I was probably 10, 11 years old, and he started taking us to the Madawaska varsity games. And at that time, this guy by the name of Matt Rossignol was coming to town, and my dad was talking about Matt, and we gotta go. We gotta go. We were young kids. We didn't get out of the house much, but on this particular occasion, my dad says, "Let's go." My dad's a huge basketball guy, and it was, I have to say 1986, Matt. I don't know. Maybe Matt can correct me on that. Maybe it was.
I graduated in '85, so.
Okay, so maybe it was '85. So we show up to the Madawaska High School gymnasium, and the band, this was my first real varsity game, probably 10 years old. And the band is playing in the corner, massive band. The gym is packed. And this is, again, I sit down in the bleachers and I'm looking around, and we proceed to watch the game. And I just remember feeling like, as you get the Madawaska team coming through the locker, coming out of the locker room through the big paper hoop that was classic back in the day. I saw that. I'm like, man, I want to do this. Whatever I do, I want to be part of this when I'm of that age. And then Matt, to see Matt play in '85. What I recall in watching him, and I had started to play, my dad always had us playing in the yard, and my dad was a fundamental guy. But what I remembered the most about Matt was how high he got in his jump shot. I just couldn't believe. I mean, he was jumping, he was coming, a foot and a half off the floor every time he shot the ball. And I'm sure, I don't remember the score. I'm positive Van Buren beat Madawaska on that particular day, but that was really my first introduction to varsity basketball, and it really stuck with me. And from that point on, I wanted to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And Matt, obviously you coached many years at Madawaska, but didn't grow up in Madawaska, so you would have played against Madawaska. Just curious what your recollections are as a player going up against Madawaska. What are some of the things that stick out in your mind? Or maybe you went to some games as a kid and saw Madawaska come to town. Like, what do you remember about Madawaska basketball growing up?
It was our biggest rival. Although Fort Kent teams probably have gotten better since then. But Madawaska for Van Buren was the biggest rivalry, particularly in soccer. In basketball, it was a rivalry just because of how close we are. But to be honest with you, we never – when I played all 4 years, I played one Christmas tournament game against Fort Kent. So 4 years times 2 is 8. So I played 9 games against Fort Kent. We were 9-0. We never lost to Fort Kent. And Madawaska, we were 7-1. My freshman year, we lost to Madawaska at home. All 5 of our starters fell. Ed Marshall was the coach back then. But I remember going to Madawaska and being in layup drills. This was '83, and a newspaper had come out with a report about Van Buren being the poorest town in Maine. So they were calling us Cheese Town and getting hit by pieces of cheese when we were in layup drills. I remember that. And I remind my Madawaska friends now about that, and they get a kick out of it. And then I finished the story by saying, yeah, after we got hit by cheese, we won by 35.
Yeah, how much did you drop that game? Just curious.
Oh, I don't keep track of how many points I had against who, but I'm sure I did okay.
Yeah.
Playing against probably my best friend now, Colin Jandro, who was the same age as me. So we played against each other. Great man.
Absolutely. I like it. I already feel like I'm more prepared for this draft now. I feel like I've been educated enough and I'm ready to go here. So the first
thing before you go though, Tom, I do have to add about Pierre's dad was my assistant coach for the first 7 or 8 years that I coached in Madawaska, and I have some really good stories about him too, but we'll wait till later.
Does that mean that Pierre has the inside track to get the W tonight just based on?
I'll be impartial. I'll be impartial.
All right. That sounds fair. So for the first pick, you guys are going to draft a teammate of yours, so there shouldn't be any difficulty here. So we're just going to go around the horn, and then we'll do the draft lottery to see what order you guys will draft in for the rest of your picks. So we'll start with Alan. Your first overall selection, a teammate of yours. Who are you going to go with?
I'm going to go in high school, probably the strongest man I ever played with. I said that he helped us carry a playoffs wins the first time in Madawaska history. Then we got a playoff win in Bangor in the auditorium floor. I'm going to go Mark Sidwa.
All right.
That guy, he could catch everything. He was a beast in the paint. And you didn't want to go inside with him because it's like running into a mini shack in high school when you run into him. So I have to go Mark Silva.
I remember that. Yeah. We're just going to go through, and then we'll bring in Matt after you guys have all made your first selections here. So, Drew, your first pick.
I gotta go with Rusty. Just Rusty. Pure scorer. Can score anytime he touches the ball. So he's someone that the opposing team has to prepare for. And I mean, his mind's focused right on the game.
All right, and Pierre, your first overall selection.
I'm going to go with a good teammate of mine, Ken Daly. Ken back in the day, I mean, before weightlifting and basketball were joined together. I mean, it was really taboo to lift weights when you were playing basketball. And Ken, I go back to this. I still use him as an example with my kids. I mean, Ken was always lifting weights, and he was really the strongest guy on the floor all the time physically. And then you combine that with his tenacity and his incredible jump shot, the three-point line. He's a 1,000-point scorer in Madawaska school history. And for that reason, I put him at the top of my list.
All right. So we'll bring him back.
That's why Pierre wanted, to have that one pick per team.
To get that pick locked in right there, right?
Strategy.
All right. So we'll bring in Matt. So first 3 picks off the board, Mark Sidwell, Rusty Neto, Ken Daly. Your thoughts on those 3 picks right there?
Yeah, 3 players that any coach would love to have, and I was fortunate enough to coach 2 of them. So I'll speak about them in the order that they were selected. So Mark Sirwa, of course, as Alan mentioned, was part of a team that was the first to ever win a game. Actually won 2 games. They won one their junior year and senior year. Beat George Stevens Academy in 05, and then beat WA in 06. The thing about Mark is he was, as Alan mentioned, his strength. And for somebody who probably played over 200 pounds, could still get off the ground. He dunked easily. Inside, left hand or right hand, didn't matter. He's a beast on the glass. Highly coachable, very unselfish, probably too unselfish. But I remember preparing for our tournament game. We had kind of scripted the first couple possessions, and we had a play Alan probably remembers called down. And I told my Don Nisha, I said, Don DeShane was my coach, assistant at that time. I said, we're going to run this play. He's going to score and get fouled. And sure enough, boom, first play of the game. So great pick. Next player, Rusty. I guess Rusty has kind of gotten Elvis status where you don't even need to give his last name, huh, Andrew? He just said, right. He's like Kobe MJ and Rusty. So Russell Nadeau it was a guy who just loved basketball. And I heard somebody mention in another podcast that he was a very underrated defensive player, and that's a fact. Rusty was quick, had great hands, could absolutely shoot it. Good off the bounce, probably a little ahead of his time as far as being herky-jerky. But a great pick and somebody that you'd want on the foul line with the game on the line. So good pick there.
And no shortage of confidence, right?
No, he didn't. He didn't lack confidence. I have a lot of good Rusty stories too, but a joy to have coached. And then with Pierre's pick, I remember coaching against Ken. I'll never forget coming to Madawaska with my Holton team, and my team ran out of the locker room first. And then, there's no music yet, and I guess the band wasn't playing that night. And all of a sudden, I hear this song I never heard before, Thunderstruck by AC/DC. And out comes Pierre and this team, and Ken Daly, I believe he had a mohawk. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and he just tore us up. He was a great player. And as Pierre mentioned, he was strong, nice jump shot, get off the floor well, and a really good player. So right now, all three teams are looking pretty good.
Ken reminded me a lot of Nathan Marquis. Man amongst boys, he had that big body, could hit anywhere, kind of go inside out, all around game, and was just very physical. You couldn't move him around during that time, right? And you had to account for him everywhere.
He's a good player.
Yeah.
And he was the type of guy that would always, and Ken would appreciate this, he was kind of a sandbagger in a way. He'd show up for the first practice of the winter, and we'd be like, he'd downplay his jump shot. Like, haven't shot all summer. I'm no good. I'm gonna have a rough year. And of course, we'd start practice, and Ken would drain his first shot, his second shot. And we're like, Ken, I thought you didn't shoot a ball all summer. And he'd be, yeah. So he was always kind of that guy that he was just physically stronger than everybody, and really a good player. It was a pleasure to play with him.
All right. So we got our first picks off the board here. So now we got to figure out the order that you guys will draft in here from here on out. So I have three numbers shuffled up here. I'm just going to pick them at random to determine the order. So Alan is going to draft, I don't know if you guys can see that, number two. Andrew is going to draft, what's that, three?
Three. Oh, we're doing snake, right?
Yeah,
so I
snake
get
draft.
All right. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so you're positioned not too bad there. Pierre's going to go number one. All right, so Pierre, you are on the clock here with your second overall selection.
How much time do I have?
Hopefully you don't need that much time, but you are on the clock.
All right. You know what? This is good that we got to pick our own era first. I'm going to go with Joey Canan as my second pick. Joey Canan, Thomas, you probably don't know him, but Joey was my running mate. Joey was my best friend in high school. And, I'm going to call him 6'3", very, very wiry, power forward, high motor, nice touch around the basket, and just an animal, just an absolute animal when it came to rebounds. Kind of a Dennis Rodman, but with a jump shot.
Okay.
And him and I growing up, I mean, we always challenged each other. We played against each other, and we went to the camps together. And Joey, he was just a solid player. And when the game was on the line, and the most important games are when he showed up. So I think it's a real true sign of a good player, as they show up in the big ones. So I'll go with Joey as my second pick.
All right, and we'll do the same thing here. We'll get through the second round, and then we'll bring in Matt afterwards for his input on these picks. So, Alan, you get the second overall, or the second pick here. Who are you going to go with?
For another teammate of mine, he was, I believe, I don't know if he was a 4-year starter, but I know he was on varsity all 4 years. Privileged to play with him, learned a lot. I'm going to go Miles Morneau. He was good body, athletic size. His soccer skills were well known around the county because he was a great soccer player. But for basketball, He was a great leader. He great on defense, and he was a point guard. So we had a 6'1" point guard that could rebound and handle the ball. So I'm going to go Miles Morneau.
Another pick from some of Matt's most successful teams. I don't know if he's just trying to butter up coach or what, but another guy I played against right there. Good pick. Drew, your second overall selection.
So this one's I think an easy one for me because it's someone that I was always chasing, and that was my brother John. And so I always grew up chasing that level. And my brother John was a quiet competitor in sports, more of an introvert, I think. But he's probably one of the top players, I believe, to come out of Madawaska. I mean, he was a 6'3" point guard, could do everything. I mean, and when you have that size, you have that speed. I mean, he could shoot the ball and follow and get his rebound and put it right back up. Quicker than the person who's under the basket looking at the ball. He's already got it. So he kind of reminded me a lot of that Russell Westbrook type guy where he just had a high motor at all times. And especially like he played, I was able to see him play with Pierre and with those guys. I got to see him play his senior year, which to me was probably the most impressive things because he was lucky. He played with some really good teams. Where he didn't have to do everything, where he could play within the system. They had scores, they had a down low presence, things like that. And then his senior year team wasn't as good, where he had to really kind of step up. And I think he averaged 35 or 37 or something a game that year, and just dominated. But I mean, even that wasn't enough. But hell of a player, high motor. That's my first pick.
All right, so Matt, you're.
Can I comment? Can I piggyback off that?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I played with Andrew's brother, and I would agree with everything Andrew says. I mean, John, when we would play pickup basketball in the summertime, as Andrew mentioned, John's what, 6'2", 6'3". John would guard me in pickup, and John, I've never seen anybody with the will to win like his brother John Clavette. I mean, and I really didn't have the pleasure to play with Andrew in high school, but I played a lot of games with John Clavette, and I knew he'd be taken off the board. First of all, I knew Andrew would pull his brother, so I didn't even have him on my list, but he would have been my guy on my team. Again, John could do a lot of things. I mean, he was fast, he was ferocious, he could shoot the three, he could defend. And just, it's hard to explain, and I try to explain this to my youngest son, that desire to not lose, the desire not to lose, is bigger sometimes than any of the points, any of the rebounds. And John just had that. And, immense respect for John Clavette.
All right. Matt, your thoughts on that round? So we had Joey Canan, Miles Morneau, and John Clavette.
Okay, so Joey, when Pierre first mentioned him and was beginning to describe him, I was trying to remember coaching against him. And the name that came in my head before Pierre said it was Dennis Rodman, because that's what he reminded me of. I don't remember him scoring a lot, but boy, he did a lot of things. Took charges, blocked shots, rebounds, offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds. Just one of these players who does all the little things that maybe there wasn't a statistic for, but all he does is help you win. So, and like I said, I think he was 6'3", Pierre. Was he 6'3"? Yeah, 6'3". And pogo stick, quick jumper, one of those guys. So, good selection there for sure. And then with Alan's pick of Miles Morneau was a soccer player who his natural athleticism made him into a good basketball player. By his senior year, he was a really good player. I remember him hitting a three-pointer from the corner to beat Van Buren one year at the buzzer. Of course, our tournament wins. He made some free throws to seal the win against George Stevens Academy. So as Alan mentioned, 6'2", 6'3" point guard, nice luxury to have. And then John, I was hoping he was going to get picked early because when I was coaching at Van Buren, the team, I don't remember John playing with Pierre. I think I was at Holton still then. But maybe one of my first or second years at Van Buren, and my Van Buren team was good. We played Madawaska, and I didn't know the Clavette family at that point, and their team was awful that year. I remember that. But John Clavette, single-handedly, I remember thinking to myself and turning to my assistant, who was John Parent at the time. I said, "Who is this guy? Man, he's going to beat us by himself. If it wasn't for him, we'd have won by 50." And it was a competitive game, and he must have had in the high 30s. Just out, and he just got it done. He was just so athletic, and it actually reminded me a lot of Andrew in a lot of respects.
All right, so we're back to Andrew with your third pick here. We're doing the snake draft, so we're right back to you for your third overall selection.
So this one, I'm gonna go. So I think this would resonate a lot with some of the old timers. It'll resonate with Pierre. I don't know if it'll resonate probably with Matt. Matt, you probably would have played with him, but we'll see. But someone that I've heard a lot. I've seen him play a little bit of pickup and things like that. They used to have some leagues up home that my dad played in competitively. Where they had different captains and they picked teams throughout the communities and all that. So some very competitive leagues. So I got to see them play. But this one, Dave Desjardins.
Good pick.
Dave Desjardins was an incredible athlete. I mean, he could kind of do it all. I don't know if he was a 1,000-point scorer, but he was just one of those high motor guys as well. One of those athletes.
Yeah, Matt, you didn't play against Dave?
No, I never did. I knew his brother Danny a lot more. Yeah. Played men's tournaments against Danny. Of course, Danny was little and more of a soccer player, from my understanding. But Danny also played at UMFK, so he was a good basketball player. But Dave, from what I heard, stories about him scoring in his 40-point game. So
yeah,
he was on my list, Andrew, for sure. He was a heck of an athlete. I had the pleasure of watching him play baseball and softball, and the guy, even in his mid 30s, I mean, the guy could hit, could field, could play. Yeah. Lives down here in Saco, Maine still, and just a very good athlete. Absolutely.
So that was the stunner pick right there. No one knew that was coming.
I thought you were just going to pick all.
I didn't expect that at all.
I thought you were going to pick all Clavettes. I thought your next three.
Well, it was that. I mean, I'll throw out another name, but we'll talk at the end if his name comes. So we'll see.
Back to
I got a lot of good names. I mean, I dipped into a lot of eras here.
Right. I got a good Danny Desjardins story when he tried to guard Matt Rossignol at Fort Kent High School. We'll save that for whenever you're ready, Tom.
All right.
It's a good one.
Back to Alan with your third pick.
My next pick, he's graduated, I think, 2010, 2011. I think he's the last male 1,000-point scorer for Madawaska. I believe you coached him, DJ Gendreau. I think during high school, he was all-around scorer. I mean, he had good footwork. He had a good jumper. I mean, obviously he can score because he scored 1,000 points, but he played basketball all the time. I think I remember my senior year, I believe he was in 8th grade, and he was probably the best player coming up. Like, he would have started, I think he was a 4-year starter. So I'm going to go DJ Gendreau.
All right. And then back to Pierre for your third pick.
With my third pick, I'm gonna go really, really far back to 1963, Thomas. Guy Michaud Sr. Michaud Sr.
That's who I was gonna take, Pierre, but I left him for you. He's a legend. He's a legend.
Well, you know what? I don't want to bore the audience, but I mean, you have to respect some of these old timers and what they were able to accomplish without the 3-point line. And Matt's also a guy that didn't have the 3-point line. I think that's amazing that Matt had the success and all the points he had with no 3-point line. But my Uncle Guy scored 1,000 points. He was the second person in Madawaska school history to do that. He was the first team, along with Andrew's dad. They were the first team to go to the Bangor Auditorium for Madawaska school history. So they were, from what I hear, my Uncle Guy and Don Clavette were an amazing 1-2 punch. Don, I think, well, I know. I mean, he played, I would imagine, power forward, center. I think your dad played center, Andrew.
Yeah.
And Andrew's dad is, I mean, what, 6'2", 6'3"?
Yeah.
maybe. So he was an undersized center, but he held his own and did more than that.
Well, and he played in university, and I mean, those guys played. There was some serious ball back then, because you look at it when we even played with them. When I got older, and we were playing with my dad or those guys, in their 40s and sometimes 50s and late 30s. You could tell they could play.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'll mention, Thomas, is that this crew of guys played in the top division in the state of Maine. I don't know if it was called Class L, Matt, or Class. It was the equivalent. It was the equivalent of Class A for their time. So they were faced up against Presque Isle, Caribou, all the top schools in Aroostook County on any given night, and they did really well against top schools. And so anyway, that would be my third pick.
All right. I like legends. I like it when you guys go back and get these legends here. So we'll bring in our expert. We'll bring in Matt on your thoughts for these picks. So Dave Desjardins, DJ Jandro, and Guy Michaud Sr.
Okay, well, I already kind of talked about Dave, so I'll just that what I said about him still holds. DJ, I did not get to coach. I got done coaching in 2007, so I missed coaching him. But I remember he used to come to the camps I used to run in Madawaska. And I remember telling people after him coming to my camp, I said, that kid's going to be special. He's going to be he'll be 1,000-point scorer at Madawaska. I had no question about that. Love the game. Good off the bounce. Is about 6'3", could shoot inside, outside. Also reminded me a lot of Nate Markey from Van Buren. So really good pick there, Alan. And Guy Michaud, I heard a lot of stories about him from Pierre's dad, mostly about Pierre's dad, Don, having to catch Guy Michaud Sr.'s fastballs, and how Don used to tell me his hand would be like in pain, and he wanted to get done. And Guy says, I won't tell you the name he called him, but he said, you're going to keep catching till I'm done. And Don was like, man, I couldn't feel my hand after a while. But he mentioned how he could leap, and it's just great, ahead of his time also. So even though that smells a little bit of nepotism, I think it's a good pick.
Thank you.
All right, so we're halfway through here, so we're going to keep it rolling here with the fourth round. We're back to Pierre, your fourth overall selection.
This is a tough one, Thomas, but I've got to go with somebody that Matt's going to know very, very well because they may have guarded each other in high school, Joey Keller. Joey Keller was an all-around athlete at Madawaska High School. He was a 1,000-point scorer. Probably probably the third player in Madawaska school history to score 1,000. I remember, again, as I said earlier, when I started watching high school basketball, that's who I watched. I would watch Joey Keller. Joey Keller was the leading scorer on the team. He was the lead. He could defend. He could shoot. I mean, he had that fast twitch, jumping ability. And just an all-around athlete. The guy could play baseball very well at a high level, could play soccer. And again, basketball-wise, I mean, Matt could probably share some stories and will share some stories. But Joey Keller, to me, was my kind of the guy when you're a little kid and you go to high school games, he's the guy that everybody was paying attention to back then. So I would go with Joey Keller.
All right.
That's a good pick right there. I had him on my list as well.
We are back to Alan with your fourth pick here. So far, all these picks from the 2000s. I'm wondering if you're going to keep it going here with the new guys, the new school.
Well, I don't remember much from the old school, so I have to stick with what I know. But this one's going to go a little bit before my time. I believe he was a good all-around player. I'm going to go with Mark Garcia. He was smart. I mean, he had a good pull-up jump shot, and he was a slasher. So with my team that I'm building now, I have to start thinking like position-wise, and I think Mark Garcia would be a perfect fit in our club.
All right. I like that pick. Drew, your fourth overall selection.
So I like my team right now because I have 3 different alpha males, 3 different competitors that will go for it. So I got to bring in a little bit of calmness, but I got to go way back for this. And I have had the pleasure of playing with this person, and so I know what he's capable. capable of. I know what he can do. A shot like no other. My shot is nothing like his, but I got to go with the Deacon, Donald Clavette. So the reason I got to go with him, I was going to go with him maybe with my second pick, but I didn't want to go brother. But I have had an opportunity to play with my father and to see him compete. And so for a 6'3" kind of power forward, he was money around with his shot. So he was the type of guy that could pick and roll, and you could not leave him because once the ball hit his hand, he had that quick release, and he was money. And then he was a competitor as well, so fiery person. I mean, he would bring us down to all the pickup games and all their tournament games and things like that they would play in. So he was the driving force for me, and he actually opened up a lot of doors to the history of basketball in Madawaska, which I think was the most pivotal thing for me in my career, because he always talked about Guy Michaud. I probably knew Guy Michaud before I actually knew the Michauds. You know what I mean? And always praises Guy Michaud. And when you get to play with these guys when they're kind of in their prime when they got that old man strength and you can see what they can do, and you think like, oh, well, they're from a different era. Well, the elbows and the things like that feel the same. You know what I mean? So I don't care what era you're from. And they're probably a lot more stern from that era. So it'll bring a little bit of toughness. I
can't believe that I remember playing men's league with your dad, and you were there and your brothers were there, and inevitably there would always be an argument because you'd be on one team and your brothers would be on another team. So we'd always end up in some type of fight, and your dad was like the referee. But as far as a player, your dad was tough. I mean, he was playing when we were there. He was in his 50s. Yeah. I mean, I'm 44, and I can't imagine playing in my 50s. My knees are like I don't know, spinach. They're done. My knees are toast. But your dad was literally trying his hardest, and that jumper, that 15-foot jumper, was money.
Wet. Yeah.
He wasn't missing that.
No.
And it was fun to watch your dad compete at that age. You could tell he knew what he was doing. And I'll add one more thing. Him and my Uncle Guy played in the Army together. They went. They were stationed at the same base together. They played in some Army leagues together and continued their friendship and their teammates. And so that's another interesting fact there.
Yeah. So my dad would tell me stories that they would go and play, D1 schools back then and beat them. They'd go on there and they'd be a team of like 6'3" and under against 6'7", 6'8" guys, and go on and beat them. Like, they were just fundamentally sound. My dad left high school here, went and played at St. Thomas University for 4 years, was inducted into the Hall of Fame there for basketball, and then went on to play in the Army. So like, I take the body of work too. A lot of these guys that are great on these lists played through high school and then stopped. The journey stopped there for them, and for different reasons, good reasons, whatnot. But I got to give props to those that kind of continued on afterwards.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you, Pierre, this is a great segue to say congratulations for being inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame at UMPI.
Thank you.
Huge honor.
Well deserved.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, so we'll bring in Matt for your thoughts on those picks for round 4.
Okay, so I'll go in the order. Joey Keller, really good selection, Pierre. I did play against him. He was younger than me, and he was a very good defender. And he did make me work for my points. There's no question about it. He guarded me as well as anybody that I remember. So really good pick. And I also played against him in the other sports, and he was outstanding in all 3. Mark Garcia is somebody that I coached. Mark kind of had the misfortune of being a year behind the really, really good tournament team. So he kind of was like a 7th man on those teams. But when Alan and Mark and that crew graduated, he was kind of left with what was left from the team that had just graduated. So he was kind of a leader on a weaker team, but really improved a lot between his junior and senior year. And I can't say I ever saw Don play even men's league, but I do know what kind of person he is. And if you have Don Clavette on your team, you got God on your team.
Yeah. So, we're not messing around.
I was a colleague of Don teaching in Madawaska. I started teaching in Madawaska Andrews senior year in 1998. And when the job opened up that summer, Don Clavette is actually the first person I called to ask about it. So he's one of the reasons why I went to Madawaska.
Yeah,
nice.
Drew, we're back to you for your fifth pick. So just to recap who you got so far: Rusty Neto, John Clavette, Dave Desjardins, Don Clavette. Yeah, your fifth pick. Where are you going?
Oh boy, this is a tough one here.
There's still a Clavette on the board. I mean,
I can't give any help, huh?
No, not right now.
Can't believe Andrew's forgetting somebody.
This is exactly where I was going to pick Joey Keller.
Ooh.
This is exactly where I was going to fit him in, right? Because then I had like the two guards, with John or John and Rusty, so the two scorers, and then Dave, and then you got me. I'm gonna say. I'll say my old teammate who's a competitor. I'll go with Ben Marshall.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Ben was a competitor. What I loved about Ben, so I'm thinking from a team standpoint here, Ben didn't mind doing the little things. Ben was just, would play defense, would rebound. He'd have one of those miracle shots every game that you're just like, get out of here. But he was a solid player. You could trust him. Somebody that could do, again, those little things. So that's who I'd go with, would be Ben.
All right. And I want to ask a question here, because Ben epitomizes the one thing I remember about Madawaska basketball from that era and those teams was in layup lines. You guys would not do layups with your left hand. Everyone would finger roll with the right hand going on the left side. And I feel like Marshall was always that guy that would just go and flip it up. So, Coach, did you guys teach left-handed layups at Madawaska, or was everyone just all right-handed?
No, by the time you're a varsity player, if you can't make a left-handed layup, I don't have time to deal with that.
Okay.
I just want you to make it.
Okay.
I've had kids get breakaway layups, especially girls. I coached girls basketball for 9 years. They'll have a breakaway layup, and it's on the left side, so they feel they have to shoot with their left hand, and they shoot it about 20%. So my theory was, I don't care what hand you shoot it with, just make it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Back to Alan with your fifth pick here.
The fifth pick for me is one of the two reasons why I started playing basketball all the time. They were new to town when I was new to Madawaska. I'm going to pick the other twin, Kenny Sidwa. He was right-handed, but he had the nicest left-handed jump shot that you probably could see. His favorite player was Glenn Rice, and he had a soft touch, and he was humble. He was quiet, but when you needed a bucket or when you needed a play, Kenny always stepped up for that. So I'm going to pick Kenny Sidwell with my fifth pick.
All right, and just to recap who you got so far, you guys are big. Mark Sidwa, Miles Morneau, DJ Jandro, Mark Garcia, and Kenny Sidwa. So
that's his tournament team with Mark Garcia.
Yeah, pretty much. Back to Pierre with your fifth pick. And just to recap for you, Ken Daly, Joey Canan, Guy Michaud Sr., Joey Keller. Now your fifth pick.
Thomas, I'm a big guy on hard work and tenacity, and just as I talked and I raved about Andrew's brother, the will to win. Sometimes those intangibles are better than talent. And if you can have talent and you can have that intensity, to me, that's an amazing combination. So with my fifth pick, I'm going to go with my brother, Guy Michaud. I think Guy gets a little bit underrated because he missed a year of high school basketball for reasons unknown. But, I can tell you this kid, when I think of Guy Michaud Jr., very, very intense player, amazing defender, and just a will to win that's unbelievable. Had a nice jump shot and would do whatever you needed him to do to get the win. Amazing competitor. He had the fortune of being coached by Matt Rossignol, which he still talks about today. Again, he would be my lockdown. He would be my lockdown defender. If he was on my team, I'd have him guard the best player on the other team. And there's a story about him, and Matt maybe can talk about this. That this is the Callis game that I've heard about. I wasn't there, but I've heard about the Callis game. So I won't divulge that, but maybe Matt can talk about that later.
Okay. And speaking on Guy, and I think what I remember is I want to say like after the year that Drew and those guys left, and Guy was like the one guy one year where it was pretty much him, and you kind of saw him step up from being a role player from the year before and just kind of be the man on those teams, and you got to see just how well-rounded he was, if I'm correct, right, Coach?
Yeah, Guy was a sophomore. He was the same age as Rusty and Andrew's senior year, which was my first year. I immediately inserted both those sophomores into the starting lineup. I caught a little bit of flack for some people who were juniors the year before, seniors who had started. I don't care how old you are, what grade you're in, where you live, what your last name is. I want to win and try to put the best players on the court to do that. So I immediately, the first thing I did is I put Guy Michaud at the point. And you're right, he did miss a year. And then when he came back, Rusty was out of school, and he was the only player his senior year. And he single-handedly took us to a prelim down Penobscot Valley where we lost a heartbreaker. And he did not like Fort Kent. And I remember he hit some big free throws his senior year. I don't know if Tom, if you were on that team, but we beat Fort Kent at home, and he hit like 5 or 6 free throws in the last minute, every one of them to seal that victory. And the Callis game you speak of was a huge upset. They had the Frost Boys, and he just went bananas that game. So think the world of Guy. He was a great player for me, and I miss the fact that I haven't seen him in a long time. So Kenny Sirwa, Alan's pick. Well, I mean, I don't want to get emotional here, but everyone knows how he died tragically in the spring of his junior year. And I really thought, I mean, I hate to compare him and his brother. They were different players. Kenny was more perimeter-oriented. He was left-handed. He was really, towards the end of his junior year, you can make the argument he was better than Mark. I mean, not by a lot maybe, but they were different. So maybe not fair. But those two, because they were twins, they just knew they say that twins sixth sense that they had playing together. They would make passes to one another. I was like, how did he see him? But Kenny was just an outstanding player, and also 6'4", could put it on the floor. Well, we upset your team that year, Tom, I believe, in Madawaska. And
we did.
Yeah, I don't like to talk about that game, but
yeah, I do.
I do.
All I remember, Tom, about that, I'm going to blame your coach a little bit.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
What was your coach's name again?
Tim Farrer.
Yeah, you guys you had a starting 5, and you guys would get up like 6-7 points on us, and all of a sudden 5 subs would come in. You sub 5 at a time. I mean, do you think you guys were the Lakers or something?
Not quite.
Next thing you know, when you guys are out, we would go up by 4. Then he'd bring the starters. Anyway, different coaching style certainly, but yeah, Kenny was really good. And then Andrew's pick. I'm surprised it's taken this long for Ben Marshall to get selected. You talk about a Swiss Army knife, pure athlete. I remember seeing him before practice, and Andrew probably remembers this. I'm seeing him on the ground. He used to do crazy gymnastic stuff, like run up against a wall and do a flip in the air. I seen him do something like he had his hands on the ground and he turned it into a handstand. I mean, walk on his hands across. He's just crazy athletic. But I will say this, in my 30 years of coaching varsity basketball, pound for pound, best rebounder I ever coached.
Wow.
At 5'9".
Wow.
He was solid. Like
at 5'9", he averaged 15 rebounds a game his senior year at 5'9".
Yeah.
Wow.
He was just athletic, smart, could be in the right place. He was a freak of nature in that sense. He'd run and do the little flips off the pads against the wall in the gym. One time he fell on his neck and just kind of got off and shook it off, and I thought he cracked his neck. But I wanted to comment on Pierre's pick with Guy as well, because I enjoyed playing with Guy my senior year. as he was coming on, because I felt I took more of a mentorship with him and to see the growth that he made. And he was a good player and to bounce back from different things and to come back, that's a good pick.
All right.
Yeah, I would say that team with sorry, Tom. I mean, I don't know if we're on a time limit here, but
We're doing good.
You had Rusty, you had Rusty, you had Andrew, you had Ben, you had Guy, you had Derek Cooper, who's not been mentioned tonight. But Matt, I mean, that team was solid. I think
Eric Zandro at center, who was underrated too. Left-hander, about 6'2", 6'3". He sprained his ankle in the tournament on a rebound and gave it to the other team for a layup before, but we'll forgive him for that.
I remember going to Bangor, driving up from Connecticut to watch you guys play. I think it was Guy's sophomore year, Andrew's senior year.
Yep.
You guys lost a tough one, but that team went. Didn't you guys go back junior year? Guy's maybe sophomore, junior, and senior. You guys, I mean, the talent level there was pretty solid. And
we played a prelim. Ben Marshall's senior year, which is the year after, in the auditorium. Back then, for some reason, we played Guilford, PCHS Piscataquis, in a prelim, an 8-9 matchup, which was too bad because we were the 8 seed. So it should have been a game in Madawaska. They had a kid named Buddy Levitt, played at Husson. 6'7". Yeah.
Lights out.
All right, so everyone's made 5 picks, so you guys are going to get one more for a super sixth man. But before we get to the last pick, I just want to go around the horn. We talked earlier about your early recollections of Madawaska basketball, just the memories that stand out. Now I want to go around and ask you guys what moment stands out as a player. So it could be a team, it could be a moment, it could be whatever you want it to be. Just looking back on your playing days, what's the moment that kind of stands out the most? We'll start with Alan.
The moment that stands out the most was probably that first win against GSA on the Bangor auditorium floor. I mean, the whole town was pumped up. I mean, the gym was packed every single game, every single home game, and actually to win and come back as the first team ever to do it, that's a special moment for me. I'm always going to remember that feeling. We had a parade, even though we lost the next one to Dexter, who eventually won Eastern Maine that year. But it's unbelievable that we were able to accomplish that. It felt great at the time. So
absolutely, you guys were good. It's a good squad. Drew, how about you? What kind of sticks out? What's the moment, the memory, the game that stands out in your mind looking back?
For me, I'm past my prime, but for me, it's appreciation for what the game did for me. So when I look back, like I remember, rushing home from school, doing my homework, then like my mom having a meal for me, and it's already dark. It's 3:30 outside. It's dark when you get home and you're doing your homework, and it's cold, and you got the fire stove going, and you're ready to go down to the gym because coach wants you there before the start of the second quarter and all this stuff. And I always tried to sneak in a little bit later because I disliked. Hate's a strong word for the viewing audience, but I disliked being in the gym. I got ADHD. I know I do. Never been diagnosed, but I have a hard time sitting still. I got to be moving. I got to get going. And so it was always hard for me to sit there in the gym. So I always tried to, even in university, I tried to get there at the last time possible. So for me, it was those moments, the preparation, and then when you get into the games, the competition. Because at that point, all the prep, everything kind of goes out the door, and then it's that mental focus. It's kind of dipping back to the time that you were 5 years old, dribbling basketball in your basement, or when you're 12 years old, doing the introduction of the starting lineup with the lights out, and you're Pierre Michaud coming out, and then you're Joey Canan, and then you're Clavette, and it's all those guys, right? Which you always did. So I always looked up to those guys. And here's a name drop, Pierre, and not a basketball player, but I remember going to the games and watching these guys play. And yes, the infamous coming out to Thunderstruck in the big, poster or whatever that they would crash through. But the final countdown, sitting next to Dave Pelletier, when he'd have this keyboard and he'd just be playing the keyboard throughout the game. And it was amazing, right? And he was really good. He'd always play the final countdown, and you'd just be sitting there juiced up. So it's all those moments, right? And just competition to me, was something that I loved.
How about you, Pierre?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Andrew has said. Just a lot of the the relationships, when you're competing together. I remember, I remember taking my first job after college, and they're literally giving us a seminar on teamwork. And I'm looking at the instructor, and I'm like, listen, I don't need to be taught on teamwork, and the camaraderie that you build with these guys over the course of 4 years. And like Andrew said, you have these flashes of moments. Obviously, you have the games you won and the games you lost. I could tell you my worst loss ever. I could tell you our best win ever. I remember it. My memories are very vivid. And people sometimes, they say, you have a great memory. I said, no, I don't have a great memory, but for those moments I have.
Yeah.
I could smell the way the gym smelled. I could hear the band. I could see where people were sitting in the stands. Those types of memories will live with you forever. And as Andrew said, it's, those are, as a collection, that's what you take with you over time. So
it's like those 4 or 5 doors when you're coming in, it's freezing outside, and you're coming in to the entrance to the high school gym and stuff like that, right? And you go from the cold to all of a sudden it's warm, and then you're in like everything. It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
How about you, Matt, from your coaching days in Madawaska? Well, what's the moment, the game that stands out the most? I mean, you coached some great teams and some great players. Looking back on your time, what kind of sticks out as the moment?
Yeah, I'll tell a story about all 3 of these guys. So Andrew, I remember coaching him, and that was a joy, first of all. But unbeknownst to me, he had some heart condition. Okay, his parents never told me about this. So I forget who we were playing, but it was an up and down game, and we're transitioning from offense to defense. We had missed, and Andrew. Meanwhile, all 9 players are down on my defensive end, but Andrew's at the foul line, crouched down, like his hands over his chest, and I'm like yelling at him, Andrew, you got to get back, and he's not moving. Finally, the referee stopped the game, and his mother ran on the court, and I run on the court, and what's going on? And she says, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, he's got a heart condition. What was that, Andrew?
I got a tachycardia, so when I play sports, my heart can go over 300 beats in a minute. And so it started when I was in 6th grade. We were just outside playing wiffle ball. I didn't have a shirt off, and I hit a double, and I get to second, and I look down, sun's beating, I'm sweating. I look down at my heart, and my heart's literally coming out of my chest, and I'm in 6th grade. So I run home. My mom's a nurse, and she thought I was having a heart attack, and so we got the heart calm, and they come to find out I had this condition. So that move that I would do is the Valsalva maneuver, where you kind of crouch down and force like you're having and so it retracts the muscle. TMI for you, but this is a little educational episode here, okay?
Yeah.
You contract the muscle and it slows the heart down. So it always worked for me, but like that was at a time where you had Reggie Lewis died, Hank Gathers died on the court. I don't know if you remember that, and those were similar conditions to what I had. And the technology wasn't what it was. And I played with this heart condition from 6th grade till my senior year of university, where they finally told me I needed to find out what exactly it was, because I never knew, like, at any point I could just drop. So that's kind of how I viewed the game. Right?
I had to apologize to your mom because I was yelling at you. I was mad that you weren't getting back on defense. I didn't realize you were dying.
you should know better. That's not how I roll. I get back.
Yeah, I played against Reggie Lewis, by the way, in college 4 times. So that's another story for another podcast, right, Thomas?
Absolutely. I'm ready for it.
Okay, and then Alan's moment, I did not realize when I took a Madawaska job in '98 that Madawaska High School, male or female, had never won a game in the Bangor Auditorium. And I think we were one of only like 7 schools in the whole state that could say that. So I take great pride being a part of that. And we won 2, and still it's the only victories, male or female, at a Madawaska team. And that's unfortunate. I'm hoping I can turn that around in my second stint here. So that was, coaching that team with Alan and the Sirwa boys and Miles Morno and Matt Bollier, another name that I don't know if he's been mentioned, and then there's Don. Pierre, my memories with Don being my assistant, unbelievable times. And Andrew can remember this game. I'll just tell you one story. He was pretty mad in Holton. Andrew had already graduated, Ben Marshall senior year. I got thrown out of a game in Holton for arguing with referees, and he had to coach from the second quarter on. He wasn't too happy with me. And I had to go in the locker room by myself for the whole game. And at halftime, he came in, he looked at me. He's like, thanks a lot. Now I got to coach this game. But my best Don story, and Andrew will remember this, I think we were 15-2 hosting Holton, who was 17-0 your senior year, Andrew, at home. Or maybe 14-3, I don't remember. But we were right there with him, a packed house. And at the end of the game, Andrew had like 36 that game, and Holton had a kid named Willie Sleeper. And him and Andrew were just going mano a mano, back and forth, and we couldn't stop him. And I found he hit like 4 threes with Andrew all draped all over him. After the fourth one, I called timeout. And so the kids come to the bench, and I'd always step out with Don to discuss what we wanted to talk about in the timeout. And he looks at me and he says, hey, Matt, I know how to stop him. I'm like, well, I'm glad to hear. What is it? He says, you have to stun him. I said, what do you mean you have to stun him? He says, when he takes his jump shot, have the defender punch him right in the you-know-what. I said, yeah, that would stun him, Don, but I don't think I want to do that. He goes, I'm telling you, if you want to win, that's what you got to do. So I said, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that because I remember people used to do that to me when I played. I said, I'm probably not going to do that. So we end up losing the game, heartbreaker. And then in the locker room after, you give the post-game talk and people leave, and Don and I are cleaning up. He looks at me, he says, you listen to me, we'd have won.
Yeah. Now you know I had to listen to some of those tactics. It was always an elbow or a stunner. I'm like, Dad, I'm not gonna elbow the guy. I mean,
he was
if he's in your space.
Yeah,
exactly. He was my JV coach my freshman year, and I remember we played in St. Mary's, and then I think we had like 8 people, and like 3 of us asked for subs at the time. He looked at the bench and looked back at us, called a timeout. He goes, I only can give you 1, so which one of you guys is coming out? And so and then told us to suck it up, and then we had to play through it. But he gets a bad rap for being a tough guy, but it's all out of love. He was a great guy. I learned
he's got a very big heart, as Andrew and Matt and Alan.
I loved having him because I felt for me, and it was my same thing as my senior year at UMFK with Jim Graffam and Chris Miller. And I felt that he was that same kind of presence that Chris was to me, where it's just somebody like sometimes I just need somebody that's a little bit grounded, that just a little sense of humor that's just different and will say something in a moment. You're not even, you're focused on the game or your mind, and he'll say something and you're like, and then your mind, you forgot about that and you've moved on. It's just a little zen to him, but he's got that kind of quiet demeanor. Where Chris Miller was like that a lot too, but that's what I loved about your dad. It was actually a treat because it's the most I've ever had been with him, on these long bus rides and stuff like that. Great storyteller.
What's really cool is that now he's able to see my daughters play in high school. He flew up, him and my mom flew up from Florida to watch a playoff game, and they don't get to see my kids play that often. So you talk about, I mean, down here in Southern Maine, it's like watching the Masters. Everybody's got the golf claps, and I'm the guy yelling and screaming, and they look at me like I've got 3 heads. And my dad, of course, is like 10 times worse than I am in terms of yelling at the kids and yelling instructions. And I had to kind of I got him on one side, I got Guy on the other. And they're giving instructions to my daughters, and I'm like, guys, you're driving me crazy. I mean, it's a lot of fun. So,
Is he in line to be one of Lon's 12 assistant coaches?
I don't think so. He might need you talk about heart issues. I think he might have to go to your doctor on that one.
All right, so we got one more round of picks here. We got the 6th men's draft. So we're back to Pierre. Just to recap: Ken Daly, Joey Canan, Guy Michaud Sr., Joey Keller, and Guy Michaud. I'm guessing junior, right? Does he go by junior?
Technically not a junior, but we call him junior.
Okay. All right, your final pick.
Final pick. I'm going to blow the doors off here, Thomas. This is going to be wild. This is a guy that graduated from Madawaska High School, but he's played 3 years in Fort Kent.
I know who it is.
Don't say it. That's who I was. That's somebody I was gonna pick.
I played men's league against him.
His name is John Libby.
Yeah.
Thomas, do you know him?
I've heard this guy was amazing.
This guy, I'm telling you right now, he used to smoke a pack of cigarettes at halftime, first of all. Before, nowadays you can, these guys, the three-point shot, I mean, people are shooting, a foot beyond the three-point line, and it's nothing anymore because the three-point shot is something that's being so common. But he was shooting deep, going back to the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. He was shooting, beyond the three-point line. And I had the pleasure of watching him. I didn't, obviously this was a guy that was graduated Madawaska High School, 1965. The guy was an absolute beast. I saw him play when he had gray hair, when he was smoking cigarettes at halftime, and the guy was unstoppable. I mean, this guy was just unbelievable. So he's kind of he's my sixth guy, and he's a beast. I don't know what he's doing today. I haven't seen him in forever, but John Libby is his name, and 3 years in Fort Kent. Has graduated in Madawaska.
All right, great pick right there. I've heard many stories of John Libby. Back to Alan for your sixth and final pick. Just to recap: Mark Sidaway, Miles Morneau, DJ Jandro, Mark Garcia, Kenny Sidaway.
Well, Coach brought him up. We had a kid that transferred from Fort Kent in our junior year, my junior year. And when he came, we said, kid from Fort Kent, we're Madawaska, huge rivals. I didn't like it at first. I remember the first play, came off a screen, and he was there, and I plowed right through him. And like usually when people do a hard foul, you get up and want to confront. He just got up, brushed it off, got the ball, and he was lightning fast. He could run. His lateral quickness, he would stop anybody from turning, whatever you can do, and hit a good shot. Have a good story about that during playoff time with Matt Boyer hitting a shot. We're running ice when we're trying to get a win, and then Matt catches it, and you hear Coach go, no, and he shoots it anyway, and he goes, good shot. And that pretty much iced the game right there with that.
He made it.
But Matt Boyer is my pick because now we're going to have defensive with him, Mark, and Miles up front where we're good to go. And he's a great sixth man because he knocked down big shots for us our junior year and senior year.
All right. So, Drew, do you want to keep this whole Fort Kent transfer thing going here? I don't know if there's anybody else who transferred from Fort Kent to Madtown, but you got one more pick.
Whew. This is a tough one because I could go either way with two of my brothers, Peter Clavette or Derek Cooper. Both great basketball players. Both, I consider, dear to me. I will go with Derek because I actually played high school basketball with him, so he gets a slight nod there. But either one would work out anyway. But what I like about Coop is his senior year Coop, because I think in his junior year he's playing behind some good players. But even then beyond, he's grown and he's a competitor and he's somebody that expanded and developed even beyond beyond high school. And so I always look for people that that want to better themselves and want to improve. So he's that type of person. He ended up having a good senior year, which I was happy about because that was kind of like he was able to finally to unleash and be able to kind of be the main attraction. So I think that was, and the thing I like about Derek is Derek's probably the best defender, or one of the best defenders that I've ever played with. He could guard anyone, and he's tough and he's quick and he's got amazing hands. And so for a sixth man, if someone to come off the bench, I mean, that's perfect. So it was that, or my brother Pete, who can play defense as well, and he's got that lefty stroke in the three-pointer. So you leave him alone in that corner, it's over. But we'll go with defense right now.
All right. So Matt, your thoughts on the final three picks: John Libby, Matt Boyer, Derek Cooper.
Okay, so John Libby, when I was in my 20s, late 20s, I played in the Caribou Men's League, and then we'd always enter a team in the state men's tournament. There were qualifiers in different regions, and for Aroostook County, it was always in Holton at the rec center there. I think it was called the Gentle Building, perhaps. And well, we always had a good team we put together. We take some all-stars, some Caribou, Prescal. We always qualified for the state. But one year, Madawaska had a team. Rusty's dad, I think, played Reg, and John Libby. And here's this guy, and you weren't kidding about the cigarettes. I was like, what's this guy doing? But man, and he was old then. I'm not gonna lie, at first I was almost like laughing. What's this old guy doing out here? Next thing you know, he's draining shot after shot. I was like, ooh, this man can play. So I can imagine how good he must have been in his prime. So good pick there, Pierre. Matt Boyer, yeah. Al, I know you said you weren't happy when he transferred over. I can tell you what, I was really happy when he transferred over. He was really, really quick. Good shooter, instant offense off the bench. Almost had to slow him down a little bit. He was very hectic, wanted to play at that pace that sometimes, when I had big guys marking Kenny, I wanted to slow the game down a little bit. He wanted to run all the time. So he probably would have been better suited playing on Andrew's teams. And then Derek Cooper, a classic case of someone who just got so much better after high school. Although he was everything Andrew said about him, I really enjoyed coaching him for 2 years. And a quick funny story about Derek. He also played soccer at UMFK, and I officiate soccer. And I was refereeing one of his college games. I don't know who they were playing. And I made a call that he didn't like. And he turned, he says, "Oh, come on, coach." I was like, yeah.
I was in that game.
Yeah. And the players from the other team all said, "Oh, man, we're getting a host job up here." The players from Fort Kent team are calling the referee coach, so that wasn't a good look,
Which is unfortunate because they probably got the best state soccer official.
I don't know about that, but
I mean, you're an excellent official, and then that's going to kind of ruin that a little bit, right? Because you're probably you're not going to be biased. You're going to call the game the way it needs to be called, right?
Like, I didn't really care who won, but it was. Yeah. I had to tell Derek, I gave him one of these, don't make it harder on me than it's going to be. So. Good memories.
All right. So we've got all of our draft picks here. So, Matt, do you have those written down, or do you need me to read them off to you one last time?
I got them written down. And if you don't mind, Thomas, before I kind of go over what I think, I had prepared for this a little bit, and I went back, and I'd like to just give a shout-out to some of the names of the people that I thought would get picked.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe the three coaches, captains can do the same for ones that didn't get picked, because there's a lot of players that need to be mentioned. So I had a current player that I just coached this year, Robbie Lozier. Tim Lozier's boy averaged about 20 a game for me this year as only a junior. Eric Gendreau, I think I gave a shout-out to. Josh Pelletier. Here's a name that I'm surprised was not picked. He played with Andrew, and Andrew was maybe a sophomore or junior. Sean Pelletier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big boy, he was tough in the post. I remember him. Don DeShane played in the 70s. The Guyangaw boys, Billy and John. Bob Sear, supposedly a men's league legend. Pat Daly, who I played against, was Ken's brother. Eddie Marshall Jr. Okay. Greg Hale from the late 70s. He was also an outstanding cross-country runner.
Yeah, the Hales.
Yeah. Ian Lee, more known for his soccer, but I think he might have been 1,000-point scorer too.
No, he was close.
Okay.
He was close.
And then a little nepotism. My son Dom transferred his last 2 years, and was a point guard on the team that beat WA. We were up 29-5 at halftime.
34-5.
Yeah, and then we hit two. I told my guys at halftime, I said, guys, okay, the first 2 minutes are critical. Either they're going to make a run or we're going to finish it, demoralize them. We come out and hit 2 threes. It's 35-5, and you looked across the way. The WA fans, it was like they're at a funeral.
Yeah, so it was bad. It was great time. I love it. That was a great time.
But Alan, I remember that game. We were up by 31 with 1:40 to go, and I was always worried about leads, and my bench wasn't strong. So Don DeShane was my assistant, and at about the 2-minute mark, he starts elbowing me. Put your subs in, and I'm like, this is not a time to be nice. I want to make sure we win. He said, you're up 31. I'm like, not yet. 1:40. I said, no, not yet. At a minute 15, I put my subs in. They outscored us 13-0 in like 60 seconds. So we won by 19. And I remember telling Don DeShane, I said, if I'd have listened to you, we'd have lost by 7.
Yeah.
All right. So before Matt makes his decision here, what I want to do, this is your guys' last chance to kind of butter up the judge tonight. So we'll go around the horn. Alan, just your final thoughts on Coach Rossignol, what he means to you, whatever you want to say to kind of make your final pitch here.
Well, first of all, he's one of the greatest coaches I've ever think. I watch coaches and their game plans. He got us ready for every single thing that we could imagine for every single situation he had to play. When I started coaching, I tried to follow his blueprint and try to use it. I wasn't as thorough as he was with Madawaska when I took the reins of it, but he was patient, calm. He knew how to light a fire between everyone. He knew how to talk to a person that didn't deal with yelling well or challenging someone. He was the best. I owe him a lot in my basketball career. I gained a lot of basketball knowledge with him, just talking to him, his experiences, and I wouldn't change the world with it. I wish senior year would have been different, but he gave me a lot of good memories and a lot of good talk. So I just have to say thank you for that, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan. I enjoyed coaching you, man, so much, and those tournament wins are things I'll never forget.
All right, Drew, your turn.
So first and foremost, if you know anything about Coach Rossignol, I have God on my team. Literally, I have Beacon on my team. So that's, if you know anything about Coach Rossignol, his priorities in life and what's most important. So I feel strong from that front. From a basketball front, though, I have a good team, but for Coach Rossignol, I only had the 1 year with him, but I got to play against him for a few years. And we always talk, it's just the little moments of shooting before and after practice and working out a little bit outside of that. And, the nice things is that friendship that was built just in that 1 year. And I always kind of mess around with them. I'm like, if I only had you for 4 years, and I had good coaches before that, but like, I look at Coach Ross as a kind of once in a lifetime coach and once in a life opportunity to have somebody that's been there and done that and has seen those. And I think at that young age, growing up where we grew up and not having the technology, you couldn't see as far. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't see as far. Where Coach had been there, he had been doing the AU, or not the AU circuits, but the ABCD camps and those high level camps and things like that. So he had that knowledge. So I missed that, and I felt I would have got a lot more of that push, a lot more of that drive. But it was just to have that 1 year was a pleasure, and was awesome because it's built a lifetime friendship. And that's to me is the most important thing. So someone that I can continue to talk, call upon, even when he calls me, I think I was close to my 30s to out of retirement to come play, some basketball player that, a good basketball player that wants to go to University of Maine at Orono, so I got to go down and play some one-on-one.
Ryan Martin.
Ryan Martin, yeah.
Ryan Martin.
Yeah. So. So that was the thing that I appreciated the most, to see the human side of somebody that you grew up, that was a legend, right? So.
Thanks, Andrew. You know how I feel about you when you destroyed your knee there a couple of years ago. I'll tell you, when I found out, it broke my heart, and I'm so glad that you've recovered. And
Thank you.
Your mom and dad should be awful proud of the young man you've become.
Thank you.
All right, Pierre, your turn. Obviously, you didn't play for him, but you spoke about the memories of being a kid. So your last chance here to kind of butter up the judge.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know Matt as much as a coach. He coached against our teams. I wish I would have had him as a coach. I mean, I was so happy for Andrew and his teammates and my brother Guy for having the opportunity to play for Matt. I thought it did amazing things for those kids in that time that they had in high school. But for me, what Matt means to me, really, his basketball accomplishments are well known. I mean, wherever you go in the state of Maine, you can be at a party, you can be at a soccer game on the sidelines. I could be down at Portland High School, South Portland. I could be down at Biddeford. If I mention Matt Rossignol, the name Matt Rossignol, people know who he is.
Harry's late.
What's that?
Harry's late.
What Matt did, I think, for the Valley, Aroostook County, and more importantly, St. John Valley, is he put us on the map. And he what he did, his accomplishments gave kids like Alan and Andrew and I kind of some goals, and it gave us the vision that people can come out of the Valley and play at a high level. And Matt was one of the first to do that successfully and make it to Orono. His career is well documented. And so what I appreciate most about Matt is just what he's done for the Valley, what he's done for the Aroostook County, and how much he cares. He still cares about the game of basketball. You can sense it in how he talks, how he carries himself. He's still very connected into high school basketball. And I'm just, he was at my wedding. I wish I could spend more time with Matt. I was happy my dad spent a lot of time on the bench with him as a JV coach, and I hear a bunch of stories. But again, Matt, thank you for continuing to be a role model for all of us in the basketball community and beyond. And your name carries weight throughout the state.
Nice words. Appreciate it so much. And your dad is a great man. And I can tell you, he was always awful proud of you. Spoke very highly of your days at Umpy, and I'm just finding out now about your induction to the Hall of Fame. So I'm sure your dad is, I don't know if your dad's like my dad. My dad was one who was always hesitant to give compliments, but your dad is really proud of you, as he should be.
All right, so now we've come down to the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time to declare a winner tonight, and we're going to leave it up to Matt Rossignol to make the decision here. So I'll just recap the teams one last time here for the viewers, and then Matt can give us his win. So for Team Pierre, Ken Daly, Joey Canan, Guy Michaud, Joey Keller, Guy Michaud, John Libby. For Team Allen, Mark Sidawa, Miles Morneau, DJ Jandro, Mark Garcia, Kenny Sidawa, and Matt Boyer. For Team Andrew, Rusty Neto, John Clavette, Dave Desjardins, Don Clavette, Ben Marshall, and Derek Cooper. So based on that, Matt, who is tonight's winner?
Tell you what, this is not easy. I should cop out and say I can't pick a winner. It's that bad. Boy, you couldn't go wrong with any one of these. And if you had these players playing in their prime and you did round robin, I mean, I'm sure they would probably all go 1-1 against each other. Boy, the thing, I'm looking at Allen's team. Tell you what, it's a pretty big team. A little worried about their point guard play, perhaps. Then you look at Andrew's team. You got some scorers there, that's for sure. Not as much size, which would be a weakness on that team. Pierre's team, they have a mix. Got a good point guard with Guy. So I'll tell you what, it's almost flip a coin here. It's hard to go against God.
Oh, come on.
Oh, man. All right.
I'm going to go with Andrew's team, but I'll tell you what, it's flip a coin, to be honest with you. Just because I had to pick a winner, that's a team I'm going to go with. But, boy, you couldn't go wrong with any one of those teams. And for Allen's team to still be the only team in history to win in the Bangor Auditorium, that's something no one will ever take away from you. And Pierre, what I like about what Pierre did is not being afraid to go back for older generation players, because I hear it from my kids all the time. My son Andre, who's 21, and he says, Dad, you might have been good when you played, but you won't be able to compete now. That drives me crazy. I have a lot of respect for, he says, Dad,
I have a good story. So I have a good story here that will complement that, right? Because and Pierre could probably, harp in on this too. We all could. But I play with a lot of good players in my life, right? A lot of good players. And I consider myself a good player, at all levels. And I remember doing some shoot-arounds with Coach Rossignol in the gym. And you see this new fad, or I say it's a new fad, but like this step back. It's like this whole new thing in today's era where they step back and have a shot. Well, Coach had that step back in '96, and the separation he would create from me when we would play, like it was the first time I was exposed really to like that. Whoa, okay, was like a 6-foot jump back to him shooting in the gym by himself, right? Like, I mean, and of course his shot is wet. So no, Andre, your father would destroy anyone in today's era. Probably now.
So that's what I like. No, not now. So that's what I like about Pierre's team, you know, and you can't go wrong with any of them. And what I think it shows you is that Madawaska has a rich tradition in basketball. You know, maybe they haven't had as much tournament success as we'd like, but it's not easy to win down there. I mean, that Andrew's team, that was a great team that lost to Madawaska. And I looked at that game. There's a lot of things I could have done differently as a coach, and you always second guess yourself. But any other circumstances, that team could have won a championship, you know, with Guy and Andrew and Ben Marshall. So it takes a lot of luck to win down there. And Thomas, you know that from some of the teams that you took down to Bangor. So I don't think you can look at how a team finished their season as far as tournament play and maybe label them as a good team or the best team or not as good team, because it takes a lot of luck to win sometimes too.
Absolutely. I learned a lot tonight.
Oh,
I didn't realize how many 1,000-point scorers Madawaska had. I didn't know the tradition. So,
but there's actually Tom. There's not a lot of 1,000-point scorers in Madawaska.
Well, you guys named more than what I knew. So that's I learned something tonight. So
a lot of team ball there.
Yeah, Robbie Lozier will be the next one. He's about
right?
150 points away. So barring injury, God forbid. Great kid, really fun to coach, and very talented. So if you get a chance to check him out next year. He'd fun
Robbie's dad wanted me to put him on the team, man. He was out there.
I had him on my list.
Yeah.
That's for those youngins, though. That's for those youngins. If they're going to watch this, right, you shoot for the stars. You get through your senior year, you go on and you do some things, and then you come back and you make the cut, right? You always got to always be reaching, right? You're not done yet.
No, start reaching.
These are for people that are done right now, right? So for these guys, it's all about the improvement. It's all about getting better. It's all about practicing. It's all about putting in that work, working harder than anybody else. You know?
Thomas, I'll tell you what. If you were going to choose an all-time Madawaska team, these three guys right here would be on it. That's for darn sure.
All right, and I believe you. I didn't see Pierre play. I saw his brother play. Obviously, I played against Drew and Alan pretty much my whole life. So, yeah, absolutely. I learned a lot. Before we get up out of here, I'm just going to go around the horn. You guys each get one last chance to say whatever you want to say before we get up out of here. So we'll start with tonight's winner, Andrew, the winner of the Madawaska Fantasy Basketball Draft. Your final thoughts tonight?
Well, you know what? It for me is just to get on and get out here with these guys who you wouldn't regularly get to see. Tom, you and I, we chat quite often, so it's always a pleasure to see your face and get out of here. But you're doing some good things here with this podcast because it's building that tradition and kind of educating others of the people that came before them and vice versa, right? Because I'm a history buff in that sense where I love to know what came before me so I can better myself going further and further, right? And so I always respected those I played against, right? Like I loved, that team. My brother was on that team with Pierre and with Ken and with Joey and all those guys. And so that to me was important, right? And so to continue to see basketball grow, we've had a few kind of down years here in Madawaska, but you want to kind of see it grow back. So I think everyone that's here is great to see you all. That's what's important to me.
How about you, Pierre? Final thoughts tonight?
No, the same thing. Just appreciate, Thomas, what you're doing. I've been following some of your interviews and your podcasts, and I think you're working really hard to get that viewership, and whatever we can do down here in Southern Maine to support it, we will. It's great to see Alan Campbell and Matt and Andrew and kind of have a conversation together. I will say, Thomas, I know your dad almost much better than I know you guys. Your dad Joey Bard. I mean, although older than I am, anytime that I was in a gym in Fort Kent, whether it be at UMFK, your dad always seemed to be there. And for some reason, I was matched up against your dad. So I'd look at this guy who had a little bit of gray hair over here, and you know what I mean, had the old school knee braces on, and I'm like, man, this guy can't be that good. And I mean, we'd be matched up against each other, and your dad was as strong as an ox for 6'3". The guy's like Hercules, and you know, he's just an amazing player. Your dad was a very, very hard worker, tenacious guy. So please give my best to your dad, and yeah, thank you for doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And Dad's still playing. Dad's in his 60s and still playing, so he'll never stop.
He's still as strong as an ox. He has not changed at all.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
Alan, your final thoughts before we get up out of here.
I just want to thank you for doing this. You represent the Valley equally. I love it. It's great to show. Like, I live in Bangor area now, so it's great to see the updates. I love catching up with you guys. I remember when I first went to USM, I think I saw Pierre at a practice with Carl Hendrickson. He was sitting on the bench. He goes, "Oh, you know him? He's from Madawaska." And I was just like, "Oh, Pierre." So it's good to see. I think it's the last time I saw you, actually. So, but it's a great thing. Every single one of you. I mean, Tom, you brought up my competitive side against the Fort Kent rivalry. We continued that after men's league. Even down here, we played men's league and pick up. Still competitive. Got that Madawaska Fort Kent going on. Coach, you taught me a lot. I can't say enough. It's great. And Andrew as well. Right when I was a senior and I was going to college, he helped mold the way, like the work ethic with that of our first UMFK tip classic tournament that we had a bunch of men's league players, me, you, Pete, Sean Caron, all those fun guys. So you guys taught me the work ethic. So I just want to thank all of you because you guys are a very important part of my basketball career. So.
All right. And we'll finish up with the judge tonight and the guy who probably has more points than everybody else combined in this chat room tonight. We'll close out with Matt Rossignol.
Well, I probably took more shots than them combined. That's probably true. But no, Tom, it's wonderful what you're doing. Like these guys said, I'm very proud to be from the St. John Valley. I'm very proud to be French. And being able to talk about basketball is nothing I love talking about more. Coaching is a passion for me because I get to help mold, young men to prepare them for life and to be able to rehash some of the memories of my coaching career as I'm getting older now. I can't believe it's been 32 years that I've been doing this. But when I look in the mirror, then I know it's been 32 years. But it's the young men that I've had the pleasure of coaching and developing relationships with. It means a lot. When Andrew Clavette was traveling for recruiting for colleges and he's in the middle of Massachusetts and he calls me just to check in. I mean, that's what coaching's all about, and it's been a pleasure for me and to be able to share stories with you. And the podcasts are wonderful, and I'd love to do one with you sometimes, Tom. I got a lot of stories to tell.
That's what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting to hear that. I had two of your kids on, hoping it would eventually lead to this right here where I can get you on. So I think it paid out.
Anytime, let me know. I got a lot of good stories. I could tell you Red Auerbach stories, Reggie Lewis stories, Sean Elliott stories, Michigan State. I got a lot of stories I could tell you.
Yeah, we'll do that. That works for me. So that's coming up, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna have the Matt Rossignol exclusive here at some point here.
That's
so
the one and only.
Yeah.
Do I get paid?
We're working on that. Speaking
Just
of
kidding.
Sponsors, hey, if anyone's looking to sponsor the podcast, we like money around here. We got bills to pay too. But thank you to all the guys that came through here. As a Fort Kent guy, I feel a little out of place. You guys definitely educated me tonight, so I appreciate that. And everyone who watched, thank you for watching. Make sure to check out all the previous episodes on the YouTube channel, on Facebook. We got the audio versions on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, you name it, we have it. So check those out, and we'll see you next time with another big episode of Big Time, the podcast. Thank you.